Hello. Some stories were never meant to be told, but tonight you'll hear one, whispered from the shadows. Tonight, I will tell you the story of the children who never left. Our story begins at an old house. The wind howled outside, tugging at the old wooden shutters, but the house remained still. The only sounds were those of creaking floorboards and whispers carried by the cold breeze, soft as a child's breath. Tommy stared at the cracked window, the moonlight casting long shadows across the dusty room. It had been days since Mrs. Thorne brought them all here to this forgotten mansion on Hollow Pine Road. The house was quiet that day. Too quiet. She was the first face I saw. The nanny. She always smiled. But it wasn't warm. It was hollow. Like she knew something. Something we didn't. The air felt thick, oppressive. Like the house itself was holding its breath. And Tommy, who had spent his life in orphanages, knew that something was wrong. He couldn't explain it, but every night the shadows seemed to grow longer, closer, as though they were moving in on him. Sometimes, in the dead of night, he would hear faint whispers, low guttural sounds that slipped through the cracks in the walls. At first he thought it was just his imagination, but after a while, he started to wonder if the house was trying to speak to him. Play. The voice would whisper. Stay. Tommy had ignored it, but one night, something changed. He woke up to find the room different, distorted, almost as if the walls themselves were breathing. The air felt thicker, heavier, and there was a faint, eerie humming sound coming from the corner of the room. It was a small old music box, one he hadn't noticed before. Its delicate tune played softly, sending chills down his spine. He reached out his fingers, trembling as he touched the box. The moment his hand made contact, the humming stopped, and the room seemed to exhale. A gust of cold air blew through the room, and Tommy froze, his heart racing. Then he saw it. A figure, standing in the corner of the room, tall, shadowed, and unblinking. A woman, or at least what appeared to be a woman with long, tangled hair that obscured her face. She was watching him with eyes that were hollow and endless. "Who are you?" Tommy whispered, his voice cracking. But the figure didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the window. The glass trembled as Tommy turned to look, but he saw nothing. Just the same dark night. The wind outside howled louder, but the room fell silent. When he looked back to where the figure had been, she was gone. The next morning, Mrs. Thorne was as cheerful as ever, serving breakfast with a fake smile plastered on her face. "How did you sleep, Tommy?" she asked, her voice far too bright. But Tommy knew better. He knew something was wrong. The house was changing them. It was changing him. And the children, they were disappearing, one by one. The silence in that house wasn't natural. It wasn't the kind of quiet that comes with emptiness. It was listening. Every creak of the floorboards, every shallow breath I took echoed like a scream in a cathedral. I had returned, and something inside those walls remembered me. The first night I spent back in that cursed house, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay in the dust-covered bed of my childhood room, staring at the ceiling, trying to pretend the scratching from inside the walls was just rats. It wasn't rats. At 3:14, I heard it. A child's giggle. Light. No. Playful. Right behind me. But I was alone. I turned, heart pounding, sweat cold on my skin. The room was empty, but I could smell something, like old candy and earth. Sweet and wrong. I knew that smell. That was the scent of the backyard dirt, the same scent that clung to our hands as kids when we dug and found the bones. You're still here. Good. Not everyone makes it this far. Maybe you're one of us. You know what to do. The following days blurred. Time was strange in the house. Mornings arrived in silence, nights bled in too early. And the laughter, it never stopped. Sometimes I'd hear it from the basement, sometimes in the attic. It was never in the same place twice, but it always came. Always. At 3:14. And then there were the drawings. They started appearing on the walls. Crude, childlike sketches in black crayon. At first, stick figures, smiling, holding hands. But day by day, they changed. Faces began to melt. Eyes were scribbled over. And always, one figure stood alone away from the others, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. That one was me. One morning, I found my childhood backpack in the hallway. It was zipped shut, and inside were things I hadn't seen in decades. Old notebooks, crayon drawings, a cassette tape. I don't own a cassette player, but the house did. I found one in the attic, coated in dust, still plugged in, as if waiting. I pressed play. White noise. Then a voice. Faint. Dark. Childlike. We're still here. Static. Don't leave again. Then silence. Then you promised. The next night, I found the basement door open. We never opened that door as kids. We knew better. The one time we did, Tommy disappeared for 2 hours. When he came back, he wouldn't speak. Ever again. He just stared. For the rest of his life, I stood at the top of the stairs, flashlight in hand. The air was wrong. Heavy. Noon. Uneasy. It pressed against my skin like wet cloth. I descended. Hurry. Each step groaned like a warning. Halfway down, my light flickered. And then I saw them. Children. Dozens. Standing in the dark. Silent. Their eyes hollow. Their skin pale. Their mouths smiling. Play with us, one said. The voice didn't come from its mouth. It came from the walls. Another reached toward me. Its fingers were long. Wrong. You were one of us. No, I whispered. You still are. I ran. I stumbled back up the stairs, slammed the door, and collapsed against it, heart pounding like war drums. But the worst part, I could still hear them giggling. The house has no mirrors anymore. I shattered them all, because on the 4th day, I saw something in one of them. It looked like me. It wore my face, but its smile was all teeth. I don't sleep now. I can't, because every time I close my eyes, I see them. The children, their hands reaching, their whispers crawling through my skull. I tried leaving, but the front door wouldn't open. No matter how hard I pulled, it just stared back at me and whispered, "You came back. You belong now." The final straw was the photograph. Old, black and white, found in a cracked drawer. It was a class photo. 12 children. I recognized them. Me, my brother, and 10 others from the neighborhood. Except, I wasn't in the front row like I remembered. I was at the end, alone. Me, no, ein star, alone, drawn in with crayon, smiling. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if I ever left the house the first time, or if it ever let me go. All I know is, every night, At 3:14, the children come, and they call my name. They never left. And maybe I never did either. They never left. And maybe they never lived at all. If that story found a place in your mind, imagine what the next one will do.